Uh, Let me start 5 minutes before with a personal anecdote, which is a kind of scientific scene to talk about the I and not the we, or in, it's people you are supposed to say, it is suggested, it may be suggested. It's a kind of scene to say, I suggest. So, this is the reason of my anecdote. In my PhD, I've been so lucky to solve a mathematical problem which 175 years ago that was not solved by any mathematician. On the contrary, one of them said, this problem has no solution, and that was the first impossibility theorem. Thanks to the Lord, I didn't know about that. Because if I knew about that, it's a Nobel Prize, I would never attempt it. So I attempted it and did it. And I was asked in my dissertation, how come that I did it and no other mathematician did it? My answer was, because I'm not a mathematician. I use mathematics. In operational research, which is applied mathematics, I'm not a mathematician. So the mathematician using the mathematical approach, axioms and theorems and all that, what they found out that the problem has no solution. But they restricted themselves, as he would say, to the axioms. If you restrict yourself to this axiom, of course you can have a restriction in the theorem, but it's not right for the problem. Because the problem is not the axiom, the principles. Sometimes people confuse principle with objectives. You see what I mean? So when you use mathematics, and he's a mathematician, he can correct me in any time, because maybe I'm saying something completely wrong.
No, on the other hand, I will say that you're saying one half
of the truth. Okay.
That it is worth knowing how far you can get with a particular set of maths.
Yes. You said that in the interaction we had. By the way, he's my co-author, but he's a lot more than my co-author. He's my tutor. He's my advisor. And he's like the advisor I had in the PhD. He's a gentle advisor. Extremely gentle advisor. As my advisor, he would never tell you, do that. He would tell you, I suggest that if you don't want to do it, don't do it. It is unbelievable. I mean, every time I receive an email from him, I remember my beloved advisor, my late beloved advisor. So I feel with him the same kind of relationship as my advisor, especially in math and computer science, which is not my field. So with him we have a real interdisciplinary communication, which is the focus of 4 invited sessions, of 4 conversational sessions. This is the focus with different, So in that personal anecdote, my advisor said, hey, write it down. Because he got a seminar from the south of the United States, people expert in the subject. He didn't have money for bringing people, but just from the south. And they accepted that. And he said, write down your thesis, you are finished. So I wrote it down. Then one of the committee, and that's the point I'm going to, he was from political science. And we needed someone from political science because the thesis was a conceptual development of political information system. So we needed at least one political scientist in the committee. So everyone approved that, and he told me, I am approving that. I sign it right away if you remove that chapter. I said, which chapter? That one, Carl Jung. I said, why? He said, because he's not a scientist. I said, why he's not a scientist? He said, well, because he's not objective. I had the courage to tell him, what you mean by objective? He had no idea what he was talking about. He couldn't answer me what's meant to be scientifically objective. So I'm going to ask you, is that an object for me? Or my perception of it is the object, the mental object? Or my objective in taking that is the object? Which one is the object? How can I be objective? So I told him that. He said, well, I'm not sure what you are talking about, but I can tell you what is objective. Where is the experiment of Carl Jung? Like the experiment you did. Where are they? Because I made some experiments in his classes. Where are these experiments? I said, well, according to that, the evolution theory is not science. Because I don't know where are the experiments of Darwin. And according to that, I don't know where Freud, if he is scientist, because he could not have done any experiment in human being. He's talking about his experience with human being. The same thing happened with Carl Jung. So it's an empirical science, but not an experimental science. So experimental science has some rigor. Empirical science has another rigor to be science. Mathematical science has another rigor to be science. Philosophy has another rigor to be science. And interdisciplinary field like artificial intelligence has another rigor. And the word objective and objectivity change its meaning according to the context in which it is used. Because all of us know that the context is what provides meaning to the word, not vice versa. So, you know what he told me? I'm not going to sign that if you don't remove the chapter. I said, I'm not going to remove the chapter. Don't sign it. I'm going to another university to present my PhD. So my advisor, he knew me, that I was not just talking, I'm not bluffing. He said, you're going to start your PhD again? I said, yes. Because I cannot accept his signature in my thesis. Even if he wants now to sign it now, I'm not going to accept this signature. Because he wants to impose his criteria about what discipline is in another discipline. So I started preparing myself to go to another university and to start it all over again. By the time I had a scholarship that would have allowed me to do it from the Inter-American Bank. They allowed me to do that because it was for 5 years and I just spent 2 years in the PhD. So I knew that I could do it. So my advisor bridged between both of us. And he accepted, and then I ended up accepting. I shouldn't do it. To reduce the chapter, look at that. Tell me now if that's science. To reduce the chapter to a section based in an internal publication, a large one, that my professor told me that they will publish it. So all the details I can refer to this internal. My question now is, these things have changed? Since 1981, I'm receiving reviews, a bunch of them, saying this paper is great, but it's not written in a scientific style, in a scientific rigor. So I, at the beginning, I started asking why, and then I never asked anymore because all the question, all the answer was the same. Hey, he's talking about about himself. He should say, it might be suggested, not to say, I suggest. So you want him to lie. Is that science? You want him to lie. Because he is suggesting that. It's him as a subject. And being subjective, that doesn't mean not being objective. Because I have objects here. My neural net are here, not in your head. So the mental objects are in my head, not in yours. So I'm being objective. Subjective is when I'm talking about feelings, affections. That's another sense of the word subjective. There is no way to avoid subjectivity. How the hell I can get access to his neural network? You are the master on that. You are the expert here on that. Tell me, how can I get in your neural network but talking and getting entrapped in the conversation? This is one of his plenary talk, day after tomorrow. The entanglement between both brains via hyperscanning. I didn't know about that until yesterday. It's unbelievable. I really recommend to him. It's unbelievable what he sent me, I read it, I understood it, and it's great. It's really great, what you can do with hyperscanning. The mental entanglement between two persons. And that's provide me support for the metaphor I used in March about intellectual dates. When you make a date, you make it with someone you like. And you make it with, most probably with the other sex. So why the hell you cannot make a date with someone thinking completely opposite to you? Why not? And enjoy that. Enjoy your opposition. That's interdisciplinary communication. That's self-education. Enjoy yourself via interdisciplinary communication. Enjoy yourself. Have an intellectual date. I was going to ask him after the conference to have an intellectual date with him. So you are already advised, to think about it, because I'm going to ask for that. Because he's living also in Orlando, so I can ask for an intellectual date with him. Why not? And I was telling a lady in March, this intellectual date could be combined with a sexual date. So you can go with a girl or the boy that you like him, like her a lot, but from another discipline. So you can have both things at the same time. You can enjoy the date, and you can enjoy what you're going to learn from the other discipline. So you're not going to suffer because of the other discipline, but because you're going to enjoy it a lot. Why not? Of course I cannot do it. I'm married. But I can do it just as intellectual date. Well, my wife is my intellectual date also, because she's a computer scientist. I am the one who's nothing. So, we are starting a project that could fail. Up to a present didn't. Where we are trying to have publication internally related but bottom up. Not the usual relationship top down where the editor of the book or of the special issue relate people among themselves. So your paper and my paper is related through the editor. This is what I would call top-down integration. So why cannot we, beside this top-down, which is necessary, but I guess it's not sufficient, why we cannot have this kind of top-down integration, but with the bottom-up one? When you read her paper, and she read your paper and try to find something in common and reference each other. So with that in mind, we what happened here? Andres, help please.
Como siempre, Andrés.
Como siempre, Andres. Hi, thank you for coming. What's happened here? It was okay. Huh? So, personally, I was getting one of the things that I estimated we will get. Personally, at least personally, I'm learning a lot. So the co-learning is working for me. And I am pretty sure that the co-learning would work for anyone who would like, or at least to have the time to read other people's articles. You cannot imagine how much I learned from him, how much I learned from her, how much I learned from him, how much I learned from Jeremy, which is a philosopher. He's a philosopher, he's not here. And I hope that the other people are learning from each other as much as I am learning. And every time I learn something, I change the paper, I update the paper in order to insert what I learned and to refer to the paper I received. So that could be done not just by me, it could be done by any author. But there should be some time left to do it. I know that everyone is pressed with time. But it's beneficial because I'm leaving the co-learning process. So in order, gracias. Es el primero.
And one has to say that every time one of us sent a comment that was half a page, he added a page.
Yeah.
It was definitely a feed-forward loop.
You cannot imagine really what he's saying. It was a cybernetic relationship. Cybernetic with co-regulation because I corrected things that were not right. It was positive feedback in the sense that both of us, we learned feedbacking each other. Thank you. And then we are trying to do that according to the time that each one of you can have. This is why we are starting just with small abstracts between 50 and 100 words. So anyone can start, with that. If he or she would not have this time, because to make an abstract you need to think about it. So please make at least comment what you are reading. Comment, hey, I disagree with that. Because you cannot imagine how much all of us we can learn from disagreement. I learned a lot in my life, more from disagreement than for agreement. What I would earn if you agree with me? A psychological pleasure. Hey, an expert is agreeing with me. Did I learn anything from him? The only way to learn from someone that you respect is that he or she disagree with you. Or not disagreeing with you make you notice that you left something out.
One other thing I would suggest, if anyone is amenable and has a little time, these comments don't have to be from an individual. A couple of you want to get together and talk and write something up. The interdisciplinary in the feed, and the information you're providing this interdisciplinary article, please do so. It's going to enrich everything.
Yes, thank you. You see, I was right. Yes, he's a gentle advisor.
Now, if I may, let me expand on the disagreements.
Yes.
Just a little wee bit on how important it is. If you agree with someone, okay, you're both in agreement, you move on to something else. But if you're in disagreement, and that disagreement could have various bases, it could be misunderstanding, lack of context. But during the disagreement phase, when the ideas are going back and forth, that's when creativity actually starts to happen. Because you start exploring other avenues that normally you wouldn't even explore if you were in total agreement. So those disagreements and the different perspectives and context that you bring to the table with the other person actually helps the creative process. And I think you'll find that that creative process is enhanced if you have several members of an interdisciplinary team working on something, an innovation of some sort. All of a sudden, those creative juices start flowing. And what I found is at the very beginning of either transdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, or interdisciplinary teams, there's always disagreements. But that's because of the different perspectives and actually the different philosophies involved in the different domains that's being brought to bear. But once the communication process starts, all of a sudden, you see a little bit of a merging occurring. And what I like about that merging, all of a sudden, it's brand new knowledge that's being created.
Yes.
Now, underneath the hood, be aware of this. Whenever you have, say, 5 different domains of knowledge together in a team, all of a sudden, you're not just merging the knowledge, but you're starting to merge the philosophy behind that knowledge. And what you're coming up with.
Transfer techniques as well.
Exactly.
And processes and mental models.
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
Now,
Especially mental models.
I won't speak about the next session because that's going to be part of be discussing. But when you add artificial intelligence to the mix, it's a whole different ballgame. And all of a sudden, you're going to start creating what's known as artificial knowledge, especially when the AI is cut loose on the world at large. And the artificial knowledge, it's something we may understand as humans, it's something we may not understand as humans. But the important takeaway there is there has to be some sort of explanatory model behind it. Because if there's not, you won't know if you should agree or disagree. Because it's very
One last thing about that is that, well, 2 things. First is transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and so on. Another place where this very strongly emerges, and I know you will agree, in fact, is in looking at requirements analysis.
Excuse me?
Requirements analysis.
Yes,
The more
yes.
disciplines you can bring,
Yes, that's with you.
the more perspectives, the more
That's you.
approaches, the more models
Both of you.
you can bring to looking at requirements or risk analysis, the better your results will be.
Yeah, the people that I most learned in my life, after the people I disagreed with, were my students. Really, really.
Oh, yes.
Because they ask questions that I have no idea how to answer.
All the time.
Yeah, I mean, so I have to ask them, for giving me, the opportunity for the next class to answer the question.
Right.
So I have to study, read other books different than the textbook, and in order to answer them. So after that, you're not going to believe it, because I never expected that happened to me. Because a problem, an economic problem in my country, 30 years ago, I had to start a consulting firm because the salary, there is no way I can feed my family with the salary. So I left the university and opened a consulting firm. And you cannot imagine how much I learned from my clients.
Another interesting thing is that
Trying to translate
yes,
technical terms to non-technical terms, I was the one learning.
yes,
So I told my wife, that's the best that happened to me, because I am being paid to learn.
and sometimes objectively wrong by looking at how they got there, or looking at what their models were. You can learn something about the problem. They're starting with things you don't know. And even if they're getting to slightly wrong conclusions, it's something that needs a mix of their perspective and yours. The last thing I was going to say is, you can learn from differences, different approaches, you can learn from different groups. Doesn't mean they should all be resolved immediately. Sometimes the best thing is to say, let's keep these perspectives, these approaches, these techniques in mind, keep going with these views, and we'll resolve it after we have enough perspective, enough information, after we've seen some other issues that don't show up either way, and then something will come of it. You may even have to sit there for, in a course, a semester, and say, okay, now I see what I was doing wrong. Next time you teach it.
In my experience, I never found the solution from one perspective. We needed at least 3 or 4 different perspectives to find the solution.
Now, I do like what you were saying just a moment ago there. And it's very important when it comes to learning, education, and training. You might not have that exact answer, and you might have to wait a while to discuss more to get that exact answer. But all of a sudden, what usually happens are epiphanies.
Gestalts.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you have an epiphany, and oh, things make sense from this context. Earlier you mentioned context. Context is very important to humans and to AI. But all of a sudden that epiphany changes things. It changes things in a human. And all of a sudden, your brain does a massive realignment to where, oh, I have new knowledge and new context. Now I understand something. But here's the real power of the epiphany. All of a sudden, it might be something brand new, never thought of before. And that's extremely powerful. I'll save the downside of that for the next session. But there is a downside to epiphanies, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. Next session.
You have a...
Yes, I just want to connect with this question, discussion, but one thing with requirements. If I understood what we want to say is requirements is which requirements we have to talk about something as the way you talk, or what do you mean about requirements when you say requirements?
Generally, a software system doesn't have to be a mathematical
Okay.
modeling problem,
Okay. So also
an engineering problem, anything where you have to apply technical knowledge or specialized knowledge.
so you mean requirements for resources side?
Requirements that involve objectives, constraints,
Okay.
results,
Okay.
understanding a problem,
The
a complex problem, as much as possible
Yeah.
in terms of modern agile thought, deciding what you have to take care of
Yeah.
now and what you can defer.
That's where the
prioritize.
differences make sense. The differences between the distinctions, which one to realize the environment. So you have to be able to make forms of things that you don't know.
It's
All what you
understanding
said,
plus
both of you and him, is adding rigor, as we will say in the next
rigor and
slide,
context.
is you are making your thinking process more rigorous, not less rigorous, as people say. It's unbelievable that I found about the 95% of the people that they relate rigorousness to disciplines, which is all right, which is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. So the rest of the slide, I'm gonna try to show you is why what you are saying add rigorousness to each discipline, not lessen the rigorousness,
But you
but
have-
add.
here.
I'll try to add something. I thought we're talking on the basis of content and different variations of the same phenomenon in this last 20 minutes, I think, or the way I hear it anyway, my construction. And that kind of sums up in what's the very basic line, or ground zero, we could say, where learning takes place. Learning takes place when we build differences. Something is different after we have learned than before. And all these variations of what we talk about, disagreements was one of them. Different disciplines and points of view is another one. Is ways of building differences. If we build those differences, we have chances to learn and go ahead. And an Austrian logistician, I can you say in English, logician, is that the word?
Yes.
The guys who think about logic. Sorry for citating him, but I'm Austrian, so I know about Wittgenstein. Ludwig Wittgenstein said, the problem, the solution, has nothing to do with the problem. So in order to find the next step, we need relevant differences, but we don't necessarily need a problem with an explanation. Yeah.
You can assume all what we are saying with ash below.
Yeah.
Just variety, kill variety. So this is, you can just put it in few words, all what we are saying, ash below. Just variety, kill variety in any control system.
Now, you said something very key. There's a difference. And in learning, there's a difference. And here's what I think that difference is, and you learn something and you move on. One of the things that has been missing in the educational system is the treatment of the affective domain in the learning. In other words, what is the attitude, belief, and value system of a person towards a concept that they're learning? And nowhere in the past have I seen in instruction where there's formalized measurement of the affective domain, the attitude, belief, and value system. And here's just 30 seconds on that. What you can do is measure a student's attitude, belief, and value system before the instruction takes place, say in a CBT type course. And after the course, run the same questions again on attitude, belief, and value systems, and see if there's a difference. The instructor or the teacher, their attitude, belief, and value system towards that concept being taught, it's a known number. Okay, you can actually just ask those questions based on the Likert scale. The student, when he answers at the beginning of a class or the beginning of a CBT module, his attitude, belief, and value system towards that same concept being taught will be different. After the instruction, if you can measure again the attitude, belief, and value system of that student as applied to the concept being learned, and all of a sudden, his score increases, say, on that Likert scale, on all those different types of attitude, belief, and value systems, it should be closer to the attitude, belief, and value system of the teacher. But that's something that I think the educational system for years and years and years have been ignoring completely. And the affective domain, whenever you look at attitude, belief, and value systems in learning, is extremely important. And I'll get off my soapbox.
Please. If any one of you have time to make a tweet, will have the time to send me a comment. Please send me a comment via email that you didn't do here or you didn't think about here, and then this comment will go to an incrementally evolutive collective paper. I got the inspiration from the paper that you gave me. So every time I receive something, I will update it and send it back to all the people that already sent me something. And something means a comment by any of the article that is there, a comment on what's happened here. It could be a little more an abstract of some new thing that you are thinking about doing. It could be more short article because we are not in the stage of complete articles. But we're gonna end up with complete articles. This will be a collection of short articles and will be published. And that will provide input to a special issue with larger articles, and hopefully it will provide input to multiple author book where each chapter would have more extension as optional. So this is optionally is more extension than this. This optionally is more extension than this. And what we will be asking you to please read the other papers. So we can have a co-learning process first. And then second, to have an internal bottom-up integration. So that what is produced is systemic and not just systematic. So systematic is when you have a system and you go sequentially. Systemic is when in parallel you are relating things and you are having this sequence of processes. Inside each process there is no sequence because all things is happening in parallel.
Two other quick comments. One is procedural. Another thing you can tell us is if you know of a reference that would be very helpful, please let us know.
Yes, yes.
Anybody who's explored something, even any piece of this that you think would be useful, that's just fine.
Yes.
Second thing I'd say, we talked about differences. The other half of the learning is similarity.
Yes.
Trying to, one of the most astonishing things that happened to me in my research career was in trying to solve one problem, and I realized that a completely different problem in computer science had an algorithm that carried over. One was computational geometry, the other was process schedule. The algorithms were the same. And we couldn't figure out what to do before that.
I call that in my emails commonalities.
But you had
So it's the same. It's the same.
parallels, similarities,
Okay.
empirical methods, approaches, relating approaches in one discipline to those in the other, finding things that work the same way. And I know this is another piece of artificial intelligence and data science.
I send that to all of you. Well, I'm not sure. But if any one of you didn't receive it, please, after the conference is over, not after today, but after the conference is over, that I will have time. Please send me an email and I will send it again. And anything that we didn't say clearly, ask it. So maybe we are not clear, and with the question, asking the question, maybe you are making us a favor to make for us something clearer than what we suppose that it's already clear and it was not clear. So sometimes, as all of you know, when you make something clear to a student, you are helping yourself to see it more clearly.
There are certainly pieces that we're not going to get to in this short session either. So
Yeah. There's a lot of things that cannot be in the short session. This short section is just to give a flavor of what we can do if you want. I was telling him, I think, someone, don't know who, I will invest what I got left in this life, because I believe in the other one. If I can see that can go ahead with other young people to continue with that idea, with systemic publication, systemic as process and systemic as product, and not just systematic. I'm not saying that systematic is not okay, it's a necessary condition. But from the system approach, it's not sufficient. You have to do also systemic. So well, this problem is still happening. Still happening. You can read it everywhere. That interdisciplinary communication is not rigorous. This was the word that is not that bad. I was going to say something like BS, but there are many words. That's trash. That's intellectually trash, you know. That's for people with lower IQ that would not know how to work with math. And then they use the general language. It is the contrary, as we were going to say. So what's this kind of people saying this is not rigorous, the people defending that, they are defending that the wrong way, in my opinion. Because they are saying, hey, interdisciplinary communication and transdisciplinary concepts like cybernetics, like system approach, like philosophy, like they have different rigor. This is not the way to face the problem. To say, hey, the same way as math has different rigor than electrical engineering, so we have a different rigor. This is not, in my opinion, didn't work for 50 years. So why we're gonna continue trying the same thing that is not working? Let's go to they call that, it should be clarity. So the rigor is clarity. Hey, anyone know what that is? Because what it's clear for you is not clear for me. So what's rigorous for you is not rigorous for me. So that's not the way to deal with the problem, in my opinion. I propose other way, and I'm using the word I. Scientific sin, that I have to use it. If you can assure by traditional peer review that it's not working well, this is why we have a different methodology of peer reviewing, which is two tiers. Which is not working either, but it's better than the traditional one. Because it's the traditional one plus the non-traditional one. Because as David Kaplan, I learned that from David Kaplan, and I'm copying him. Okay? He's a medical doctor that he was really bad at the peer reviewing. In medicine, peer reviewing is something that could be dangerous. So he said, let me tell you, and he said that in 3 pages, short article. Peer review has 2 functions. One, to improve the paper. Then you should send to your colleague the paper before submitting it to the conference. But no one is doing that, or few people are doing that. The second is to help the editor or the organizer to decide who is to publish. He says, this is a completely different objectives. They should be done in different way. And I believe him, I still believe him. You don't have to use the same means to get to objective. We use different means. So this is the reason of our 2-tier reviewing methodology. One of them is non-blind. You choose your reviewer. Because in that sense, you have to improve your paper with your reviewer. And I choose our at random reviewer in order to help me improve my decision. So in order to avoid people talking, that's, we said, thanks to him, to the Professor Marlowe.
And Dr. Nusselt.
Huh?
And Susu.
Ay, Susu no sabe. thanks to both of you, and he helped me, edit what we wrote, and all that. Each one of them is a necessary condition which is more rigorous than traditional non-blind reviewing. So you have to have the majority of the non-blind reviewer, and not all, the majority of the non-anonymous reviewers suggested by the people. So it's and, not or. And he clarified me that if we are doing that, we should write it down. And we wrote it down, and he helped me in doing that, and I did the paper, short paper of 2 pages. I don't know why I got that on there.
Part of the reason for that also is because this is and has always been an interdisciplinary conference.
Yes.
And you can't assign random reviewers from your body of reviewers and expect them to have a good idea of what disciplines you are combining or which discipline you are in. If this were a mathematics conference, you'd at least have some chance that some of the reviewers would be moderately familiar with both the techniques and the sub-areas. But if I were to send a mathematics paper into this conference, we choose reviewers at random, even those who said, I know a little bit about math. The odds that you'd find somebody who knew exactly what was going on would be pretty small. But the people who I suggest review it will both know the context and will, I hope, be trying to help me improve the paper.
Yeah, yes. And so, just to stop fighting, because I've been 4 years in my life fighting, and I lost all the fight. So I said, let's do it as the people want to do it with traditional reviewing. Let's do it. But beside the traditional reviewing, we're going to do another one. And this another one would be done if and only if the traditional review says it's accepted. So there is no way to fight that. Because I'm doing what you are saying that I have to do, but I'm doing something else. You see? So this is the project that we are starting. Okay? It's plus another layer of rigor. Not instead, but plus. Probably it's everywhere. I didn't read it up to the present. So this is why we say we suggest. Why is more rigorous to do that? The additional rigor. He would know that better than anyone. And Professor Marlowe would know it. And the consultant would know it. Because you have, additionally to all the peer reviewing, you have to have the rigor of translating from one semiotic system to another semiotic system. The semiotic system of civil engineering to the semiotic system of electrical engineering. The semiotic system of math to the semiotic system of language, natural language. This is how education and mathematics operate, or not. So one example that he alerted me about something very critical about this question. The translation made in math in order to provide mathematical education. So the professor in math, are they being less rigorous? Or more rigorous? Because they have to present the rigorousness of the math, But beside that, they have to add the rigor of being understood by the student. So they have to do the right translation between the semiotic system of math and the semiotic system of English. Because we are talking about both semiotic systems. And the translation is not easy because in the second semiotic system, you have to fulfill the three levels of semiosis. The syntaxis, the semantic, that the word that you are saying, the student are taking the word in the same meaning that you are giving him or her, because if he or she has different context, she will not be understanding the word in a different way. And the pragmatic, the student got to understand me. The pragmatic is the user of the semiotic system. The pragmatic is the user. So you have to add this layer of rigor, because what is rigor? Disciplinary rigor. What's that? Please relate disciplinary. I'm working on a paper on all the principal notion and definition of the word discipline. I don't have enough life to get all the definition, not even if I was 25 years old. So you can imagine the diversity about, what discipline is. But the one that can resume that is discipline. Discipline. What is discipline? To do. You as discipline, what I'm telling you to do. Am I right or wrong? If you are my disciple, you have to do what I'm saying. So rigor, even rigorous diet, in any sense of the word of rigor, is rules that you have to follow. So in science you have methodological rules that could be experiment or empirical or logics or mathematics, which are different set of rules. So you have to follow rules. So after studying things by myself and with the alert I got from him, I had an epiphany. I start seeing the rigor as what I learned in my PhD as an operational research project. In operational research, you have objective, you have restriction. You have to achieve as much as possible your objective, but restricted to some real life restriction. So where are the rules in rigor? Objective and restriction. You have to respect the restriction. You cannot do something unfeasible, but you have to follow an objective. So rigor is better explained by the Seton approach, by the operation research. It's a way of doing quantitative operation research. Take your operation research as a paradigm, not as mathematical algorithm, you see, but as concepts that I have to maximize my achievement toward my objective, but subject to rules. So the rules in rigor are the restriction and the objective. And the objective. So if you add objectives, you are more rigorous. If you add restriction, you are more rigorous. If you change one restriction by other, you have another rigor. You see, if you change your objective by another, you have another rigor. But if you add restriction and add objectives, you are being more rigorous, not less. We will say in Spanish, por amor de Dios. Por amor de Dios. I know how to say that in English.
Por amor de Dios, you have 5 minutes.
Talking about constraints.
I don't want to be rigor with the time, but unfortunately time is
So,
irreversible.
thanks to him.
Time is irreversible.
When I presented the example of the mathematical education, I was alerted. I was really alerted about what he said. That the only way to relate what he said with what I was trying to say, it took me 1 hour to penetrate, to absorb what you told me. This is what I found in the context that I'm trying to give you. Because he introduced the difference between the rigor of pure mathematics and the rigor of mathematics education. So pure mathematics is to find, to discover mathematical proof,
Mathematical results.
and to present it. So the mathematical proof are done by analysis, which means, in the two sense of the word analysis, what mean in geometry with the Greek, which is to go to something, the hypothesis, to something that implies this hypothesis. Not what this hypothesis implies, but the other thing that imply it. And then if I arrive to axiom, then I discover the proof. So now to present the proof, I need the synthesis. I need to synthesize, to relate the axioms in order to compose, to synthesize the theory. So we have analysis and synthesis in pure mathematics. Analysis to discover the proof, and synthesis to prove.
That the actual proofs that mathematicians write, but I'm sure anyone here is a mathematician, are usually very different from the way the mathematician has actually come to the proof.
Yes.
Certainly there are a lot fewer blind alleys, but in addition, the pieces are put together in a fashion so the student says, how the hell did anyone ever come up with this?
Yes.
The answer is they never came up with this. This is a post facto explanation.
Yes. So this is why I times said 4 years ago, the graduate course, half of them were mathematicians, I was an electrical engineer. That got course of philosophy on what meant for the Greeks analysis and synthesis geometry. So I told them that all these books are not mathematical analysis, are mathematical synthesis. They started laughing at me. The half of the people were from mathematics, and they started laughing. When I tell them why, they stopped laughing and they asked me the next semester that I was teaching probability theory, to teach it as analysis and not as synthesis. I said, I can do it if you accept me that I will be teaching less than the half of the program. Efficiency and effectiveness. So all of them accepted. I gave the teaching the other way around as analysis. And as expected, I couldn't teach more than the half part of it. But as expected, the teaching was not instruction, but it was educational, because they could recreate the demonstration, even in one case 5 years later, of a guy I met in a wedding. He said, Professor, do you want me to prove the central limit theorem? And in a napkin did it. So it was not a matter of remembering the synthesis. It was a matter that he learned how to discover it again and again and again and again. So he was completely right about that. Because I even lived this situation before. Completely right, but I forgot. But I had to relate it to the example I gave. And the relation, I suppose, is this. Mathematics require analysis and synthesis. But teaching of mathematics does not require analysis, but require synthesis and the translation between the math syntaxis to the English or Spanish or German syntaxis. You have to make this. So this translation evidently, obviously, needs creativity. More creativity, evidently. Which doesn't mean more originality. Because you can be creative and not original. But you need to be creative to be original. Okay? An example, I'm giving another slide, is reverse engineering. When you have reverse engineering, Japanese are expert on that. Now the Chinese are expert on that. When you make reverse engineering, you're not producing a different product. There is no originality. But you need the creativity to see the process in a reverse way. You see what I mean? Reverse way. Synthesis analysis is a simile, not even an analog. Okay? You have to go the other way around. But you need creativity, and this is the best example I can get you, the reverse engineering. Thanks to this creativity, Japan went up. And thanks to this kind of creativity, in my opinion, China went up. Because reverse engineering, not because of originality, but because of creativity. So please, people from Latin America here, what do we need in developing country? Originality or creativity? So why the hell, and excuse me the word, and why the hell we still insisting in original papers? Why? Why? Why?
Which does not mean that we're saying that no new ideas are worth pursuing. If you have one.
You see, so this is what I called self-imposed intellectual colonialism. Because we self-imposed ourselves to promote people as they are promoted in the United States, which is by original paper. And the more original paper we make, the more we help the United States to develop. And the less we help our country to develop. Isn't that a shame that our budget, small budget, is working to provide the American with more development? But Americans did not impose that to us. We imposed it ourselves. because we make copy, but bad copies. Japan, when Japan started making copy, they were good copies. China, when made copies, they made good copies. I'm not going to talk about Latin America, I'm going to talk about my country. When we make copy, are bad copy. Extremely bad copies. So all what we have to do is to make right copies. Right copies need originality. It's not just, a copying machine. To copy how you call it?
Copy the artifact.
The
Copy the
artifact.
appearance, not the-
Copy what you have to teach. What's the name of that? The thing that you have to teach. Hand out. There is another name. No. Handbook. Yeah, but there is another. There is another word that you have to teach that. Content. Syllabus. So what we make is to copy syllabus. This is a wrong copy. And as long as we copy syllabus, our budget is going to the pocket of the American enterprises. Because we are being original to who can absorb the originality that Latin America or other developing country can have. Who can absorb that originality? Who would have the money, the risk, what is called risk investment? Is the developing country banks. Because in our country there is no risk investment. No one will risk anything. No banks have this department. No banks. So who's going to get the innovation with the originality? It's so easy to learn that. I get even mad at myself. I'm not being able to express what I want to express. Because if I were able to express it, I already expressed it for 30 years. So I got mad at myself because I'm not being able to express what I need to express. Not even in Spanish. So okay, let alone in English.
Nagib, I have a comment on this slide. Because if this means you have the translation to teach, then I guess you need a fourth circle, because in this circle you have to improve the didactic of the special discipline, and you have to improve the learning methodology. So for me,
Yes.
there must be a fourth.
So it's more rigorous. So it's more rigorous than just have a book of mathematics which are related to result, and it should be called mathematical synthesis and not mathematical analysis. So all this book, and I need someone to convince me that I am wrong. All the books called mathematical analysis are wrong. They are mathematical synthesis. Mathematical analysis did the mathematician who proved the theorems.
Well, but I have to say that, yeah, you're right, and of course you can keep going, because you also have to understand the students, and so on.
So I'm very sorry that I'm getting a kind of emotional about that point.
You're also getting late.
Late and emotional. Because my emotion is because I failed for 40 years. And I'm just trying to see if we can start something that can survive me. So my life would have meant something. Because I failed all my life trying to convince the university authorities, which are not authoritas. They are authority. because the authorities are usually not authorities. Because authorities are bureaucratic things. Authoritas is that mathematician that he's working in his, and that's a physicist that is working in his lab. This is an authoritas, not authority. So we should listen to authoritas, not to authorities. Authorities are bureaucratic. Authoritas are content. They are related to content. Authoritas are related to form. Okay.